Do conference championship games matter anymore? Well, from the view of getting a first-round bye and a top-4 seed in the college football playoff, hell yes, they do. But Lane Kiffin, mentioned earlier this week, is the risk worth the reward if you're on the bubble? Well, since we don't know if the committee will penalize you for losing, regardless of what they say in the press, it's almost impossible to know the answer to that. But one thing I do know is this. If your team has never won a conference championship in their current league, like Ole Miss or Texas A&M, it should still matter a lot. Now, if you're Alabama or you're Georgia, who's won the league many times, maybe it's not as big of a deal to you, but in my opinion, it should still matter. If you don't make the conference championship game and you don't win the national championship, you've basically won nothing. Now, I get that you don't want to seem soft or afraid because you don't want that to bleed down to your team, but it doesn't matter if you like Kiffin or not. The job of a head coach is to view all the scenarios, good or bad, for their team. And once again, since the committee has no rubric or methodology when it comes to their rankings, it is scary out here. These coaches are truly flying blind. Even Kirby Smart said it after the game last weekend. Now, do I think it's a good idea to go tell the media this as the head coach? Not really, because it doesn't help your team, and you want your team to focus on all their big goals game by game. But I don't blame Kiffin for thinking. Indecision is downstream of leadership. And by not knowing how your project will be graded, taking the cautious route does make sense. But once again, having no rules or guideline creates the type of indecisiveness on your path forward. So let the players go line up and play, control what they can control, and aim high. But coaches do have to think about these things because, like it or not, this is the reality we are living in with this playoff committee. David Cohn, he lives in reality and was a quarterback at Michigan. My brother lives in reality sometimes. He also thinks he's a dragon on Fridays, former Western State, Colorado wide receiver. David, as a guy who has a Get Off My Lawn segment each week, I think I know where you're going to land on this one, but I want to hear it anyway.
Actually, maybe this should be tomorrow's Get Off My Lawn. Maybe I should expound on that. But before then, I find this mentality soft. I really do. Now, I do want people to understand, I get the strategy from the other point of view. I understand saying, well, hold on, we don't want to risk another game when people are sitting at home, so we'd pick up a third loss and not make the college football playoff. But by that line of thinking, you're acknowledging that the college football playoff is more important than your own conference, which is different than what I've heard from SEC fans for the last 30 years. I've heard that the SEC championship is the national championship. I've heard that that trophy means more than the national championship trophy. And for teams and programs like Ole Miss or Texas A&M, like you brought up, or even throw in Tennessee right now, none of those programs have won an SEC championship this century. I would think that the grand sum of your ambitions is not to make a college football playoff in a year when it's tripled in size. I would think you would want to go have an opportunity to be the king in the most dominant conference. Show me a team that is scared to pick up that third loss, and I'll show you a team that's already been beaten when they get to the college football playoff. And I'll give you this example right here. This is Alabama captain Tyler Booker when he was asked about this subject, and this is from our friends over at The Next Round. First and foremost, this is quote, first and foremost, we're super focused on Oklahoma this week. That's what we're worried about. But our program values, our pyramid of success, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Alabama wants to be in the SEC championship game, and when we get there, we want to win it. Do you see? Do you see what makes them different? That's why Alabama can't be beaten. That's why they've been the gold standard in the conference. And so, to me, there is methodology in this year's college football playoff. For the first time, we have a little bit of methodology. Do you want to be in the postseason? Yes, then win your conference. It's that simple. If you win your conference, you're in. If you're on the outside looking in your own conference championship game, then why should you criticize the committee for being on the outside looking in of the postseason invitational? I don't get it.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I was, so upset that Florida State didn't get in last year, because they did win their conference. They did hit that marker that should have allowed you in there. We know there's extenuating circumstances, but still it is what it is. Blaine, I 100% fully understand a coach sitting down in a coach's meeting, or even after the season is over, coming out in the media and saying this. And I know Lane Kiffin, one of the best parts about him is he's very honest. He's going to tell you how he feels, and he's very transparent. I'm all for transparency. But to me, him coming out and saying this, I just don't understand why you would do it right now when Ole Miss is fighting for their life, and we're going to preview the game they're about to go play in Gainesville. You shouldn't be worried about this. Just like Matt Rule shouldn't be worried about not counting the Michigan game from last year because there's a quote-unquote investigation still going on. You don't need to be worried about all this. You need to win the rest of your games. You need to get your team as prepared as possible. And we know that this Ole Miss team has showed a lack of maturity at some points throughout the season. And Lane Kiffin got off social media for a whole week after something similar to this happened earlier. I just don't know why you would come out and say this because, look, it's true. But this is something that needs to be talked about to coach, and then maybe after the season, go to the media and say it. I just don't know how this makes you looks good, even though he's right.
Yeah.
We don't know. They can come out and say, we're not going to penalize you. It's just going to be a reward. But I don't trust anything that comes out of there, just like I don't trust what comes out of Russian television.
Well, and especially for Ole Miss, Russian television, it's really good. How many SEC championships have Ole Miss won?
None.
I looked it up earlier. It was 6, but not in like
Since
modern
the SEC championship
game, which is the early 90s.
And they tied LSU in 2003. They were co-West champs, but didn't play in the SEC championship game in Atlanta. And obviously, we're referencing the championship games.
I think it can be soft and true at the same time. And Jake, we kind of talk about this when it comes to college basketball. You know, especially we talk about Auburn last year. Auburn won the SEC championship and then didn't really get anything when it comes to the tournament. I mean, you're sitting right next to UConn. So what it comes down to, will the committee penalize you for this? Do you think the committee is going to penalize teams if they lose their conference championship with 3 losses?
I've got no idea.
I think it'll be circumstantial.
It will be circumstantial because all of it's circumstantial. But therein lies the problem. The reason there are these questions is because we have no idea. Now, you can sit here and say, oh, well, we've never had a 12-team playoff. There's no precedent set. I'll use Florida State as an example once again. They won the ACC championship last year and did not get in. So if I'm a head coach and I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, well, if they're going to penalize the team because of an injury that won the conference championship game, what are they going to do if we lose the game and go 10-3? It's a very simple fix to me. You treat the conference championship game as a reward, not a punishment. Mm-hmm. And when the team that loses, that becomes 10-3, you treat them like they're 10-2 when you're looking at all the other teams that are 10-2. I think it's that simple. But the committee doesn't do what's simple, right? They're going to do what's beneficial to them and what's beneficial to the pocketbook.
I agree.
Okay, so one of the things I was thinking on that is rematches are an interesting point on that.
That's what we were talking about yesterday.
Teams are meeting in the conference championship for a second time, and you pick up your second loss to that team in a season. I think that's more telling than if you're picking up your first. That's why I said that I think it's circumstantial. Now, one way around this is you could just go ahead and give the Power 4 teams, make the winner and the loser make the college football playoff. Then you have your group of 5 teams, so that would leave 3 at-large spots. Then you'd have coaches who want to desperately go play in their conference championship game, right?
That's true. And look, and they'll probably expand the playoff using that methodology here soon, especially when they.
But then the winner still gets the bye, so there's still a reward for the winner. So
there's an incentive for it. I'm fine with that. And to me, that makes sense because it's concrete, right? It's concrete. This is how we're going to do it. These are the 2 teams that are in, and then we're going to look at the rest of the at-large spots. This is how we're going to look at it. This is the rubric we're going to use to grade it, regardless of who you are, what brand you are. This is the rubric we're going to use. So to me, I don't mind the thought about it because as a head coach, you do have to think about it. I do question the execution and why you would say that this week when you're about to go play a game in a hostile environment with a quarterback that is gaining more confidence in DJ Lagway, and your team should be focused. I think if Ole Miss wins out, there's a really, really good chance that they're going to get in. I don't know, we can look at all the tiebreakers, the SEC championship, this, that, and the other. I think their strength of schedule is going to hurt them at the end of the day when they look at all those together. We put up our rankings yesterday. You can look at the SEC standings. I'm just not a fan of coming out and saying this right now, at least at this point.
I think the real question on the college football playoff is like, what do you want to see as fans? Of course, we all want to see the best competition play against each other, but that's the phrase that's so often used that muddies things up, which is, well, no, it's the best 4 teams, and then we have this whole argument and conversation about who gets to decide the best 4, and we have a bureaucratic committee. Basically, what I'm getting at is every single March, we see a team who I've never even heard of before. You have someone like Fairleigh Dickinson upset and beat a number 1 seed, and we all love that, and we claim to love that anyway. But before that happens, we complain that they shouldn't have been in the tournament in the first place. This year, a great example of that is Indiana. Well, Indiana's about to go get their shot against the Buckeyes, the number 2 team in the country. They could lose by 50. Maybe they'll win the game. Maybe they'll win by 50. I really don't know. I think they're good. Let's see what happens. But everyone claims to love that story, but then at the same time is hoping that they lose by 60 points so that Indiana, that magical story you've claimed to love all season, doesn't make the college football playoff. So I'm just wondering, do college football fans actually love college football, or Or are you just hoping that some other team from the conference that you play in, even if it's not your team, makes the postseason?
Well, yeah, to me that's circumstantial too. Like if I'm a Texas A&M fan, I want Indiana to lose by 1,000. But I mean, if I'm an Auburn fan and we got no dog in the fight, I like a good underdog story, but I also love college football and I want to get the best matchups possible. And like you said, the term, we want to get the best 12 in there. Well, I mean, yeah, but like, how do you get the best 12? And that's easy to say. Like, I want to be the best person I can possibly be, but I got to know how to do it to get there. So to me, when I look at it and we look at this 12-team playoff and you got the automatic slots and you got this, if you're going to be wrong, at least be able to explain to me in a consistent manner of why I think you're wrong, but I saw how you got there. Just show me. It's like a math test. Show me your work. If you can show me your work, whether I agree with it or I don't agree with it, I'm fine with it. But I think we can all agree that a loser in a conference championship game should not be penalized for that.
No, I do agree with that. And I'm just thinking about this in real time, so I'll ask both of you guys this. We've talked for years about, well, we want to get the best 4 teams in the college football playoff. Now we're talking about we want to get the best 12 teams in the college football playoff. Do we want to get the best 2 teams in the conference championships? Do we want to get the best 2 teams? Because I don't see Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart's come out last year and then this past week saying, well, Georgia would be favored against a number of teams in the country, so just go ahead and automatically put us in the college football playoff.
Well, that was the argument last year.
I don't see him coming out and arguing that we would be favored against every other SEC team, so just automatically put us in the SEC championship.
Well, but that again is why they made a move on that. They got rid of divisions. Now I think every conference should have the same amount of conference games. So there's a baseline we can all operate off. You have the same amount of non-conference games, same amount of conference games. But when you got rid of divisions, that's what you were trying to do. So we didn't have a situation where, Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State are all in one division and there's only one rep. And we've seen it go back and forth in the SEC too. Some years the East is better and dominant. Some years the West is better and dominant. But at least they made a move to try and do that. So I can appreciate that because I do want the 2 best teams in the conference championship. I would have loved to see Ohio State and Michigan play twice, in the years where it mattered the most. Or maybe Penn State's in that other division and they get to play one of Ohio State or Michigan again. So at least they made a move to do that. With this whole situation, I just don't feel like we're making a move to do that. And at the end of the day, they don't really care because they're the ones that are turning the keys from their ivory tower.
All right, you ready to get to the chat? All right, chat, hit that like, hit that subscribe button. If you donate, it's on topic. It will get read, and we'd really appreciate it. We're going to start the day off with Chad. Chad, what's up? Says, fellas, it won't matter in a couple years anyway because conference championships will go bye-bye with a 16-team playoff.
Here's where I understand that line of thinking, but here's where I disagree. The conference championship games make a ton of money. A ton of money. You look at hosting it in Atlanta. Not that Atlanta needs all the money, but they make a ton of money. And it's a big deal. What you're going to see happen, I think, is when you go to a 16 playoff or beyond. Because once you get past 16, I don't know how you can sit here on one hand and say, we care about player safety, but we're now going to make you play 20 games in a season. Those two things can't exist together. So what they're going to do is they're going to say, you know what? Everybody played the same amount of conference games, and we are going to eliminate 1 game from the regular season because we played 11-game regular season schedules for a long time. They're not going to take a slice out of the money pie in the conference championship game, including the conference commissioners like Greg Sankey, Petiti, and these guys. They're going to take a game out of the regular season. So for all those people that were worried about the expanded playoff watering down the regular season, you were right to be worried, but you were worrying about the wrong thing. It's not going to make the games less important or less enthusiastic. It's going to actually eliminate a game from the regular season. That's what I think you're going to see happen.
Well, I think that most likely will be terrible. Obviously, unless they're picking from a non-conference matchup, that's the worst case scenario, and it will weaken the conference championships even more. Because at least right now, the winner gets a bye.
Yeah.
But at 16, you won't even get a bye. So you can say, well, the number 1 seed will play the 16th seed, but that's not as good as having a bye week.
It's just like a March Madness region, 1 through 16. It'll go just like that, and there won't be a bye. So really the incentive of actually winning the conference championship game is not going to be as high as it even is right now with the 12.
That's why 12, I mean, this was my whole problem with going to 12 was that we hadn't even, people were calling for this before we even played one of the 4-team playoffs out 10 years ago. Remember this? Now we hadn't even played a 12-team playoff and we're already talking about going to 16. I mean, Tim Brando's been on here laying out exactly how it's going to happen for 6 months now.
Well, like we went to first base and skipped second and third. Like we started out holding hands, now we're having a kid. Like what happened in between it? There was no in between. And now, again, when you see the returns that come in on these games, because they're going to be great. Mm-hmm. The games are going to be incredible. The atmospheres are going to be nuts with the home team hosting the first round. it's only going to expand. That's why I wanted to go to 8. So if it did expand, it could go to 12 and then maybe 14. But now since we've gone to 12, you tripled it the first time. What's going to keep you from doubling it this time? What's going to keep you from adding 6 teams and going to an 18-team playoff or whatever the hell it's going to be? That we don't know. What is up, YouTube? You know the deal. Subscribe.